Or assalamu alaikum and very good evening. And also good morning, good afternoon, depends on where you are now. Uh, Let me welcome you to the live session on structuring and writing and structuring a PhD thesis or dissertation. All right, I have been requested by many students at different times to share some guidelines, some tips on writing chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and 5. All right, so I have few students alive with me. Later on, I will bring them to the stage. So they will have the opportunity to ask question directly. And then those of you who are with me online, you can put the question in the chat box. So I will take the question from the chat box and answer you from the chat box. Okay. And those of you who are with me already, do you mind to share the live session in your Facebook, please? So let me share the screen and then I will start. All right, so I think my slide is been shown. So this is what I'm going to cover today. The title is Writing and Structuring Thesis or Dissertation, Chapter 1. Okay, so that's what I'm going to cover today. Okay, so as I said, there have been a lot of requests. A lot of students have been requesting me to conduct the sessions, guiding how to write chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Okay. Now, let me quickly go through some of the foundation understanding that we need to have. That is, first of all, what is thesis? What do we mean by thesis? All right, let us look at it. A thesis is basically a written work resulting from original research, especially one submitted for higher degree in a university. Okay. Okay, let me see. I see somehow it's not moving there. Okay, you can see, right? Yeah. So a thesis is a written work resulting from original research, especially the one submitted uh, for higher degree in a university. Now, a thesis is a document that is submitted in support of candidate for an academic degree or professional qualification. It could be master by research, it could be PhD, it could be DBA, it could be many other academic qualifications that we look for. Okay. Now, there is a fine tuning. There is a little difference between thesis and dissertation. In most of the countries and universities, thesis and dissertation is used interchangeably. But there is a little difference between these two. If you are doing PhD, it's a fully research work. In that case, we'll call it a thesis. But say, for example, you are doing DBA, whereby you have mixed mode, you have certain coursework that you have to do. And then part of your work is research. In that case, we'll say dissertation. So for DBA, we'll not call it thesis, dissertation. For PhD, we'll call it a thesis. But again, as I said, in most of the countries, these two terms are interchangeably used. Okay. Before I begin looking into chapter 1, and still I need to give you certain more backgrounds. A thesis is like a book. Once it is done, submitted, you will never be able to correct anymore, right? Once you have attended the final viva voce, whatever minor major corrections given and do it and submit it, become a formal document that cover every aspects of a research being conducted by the candidate. Okay. Now, how do we get the start? As we know, PhD, we always call it a journey. So when we start, you have to prepare a thesis outline. Please remember, different university have different guidelines on how to write chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Certain university I have seen, they have even 10 chapters. Okay. Those of you who are doing thesis, PhD in Malaysia or masters in Malaysia, most of the time you have 5 chapters. There are cases whereby you may have 6 chapters. Okay. Next session, when I talk about literature review, the second chapter, I will talk about that. how can you have one extra chapter even in when you do thesis in Malaysia? When I read thesis in the Macquarie University from Australia, I see they have more chapters, sometimes 7 chapters, some students even have 9 chapters. So depending on the university, you have to follow the guideline, you have to prepare a thesis outline, discuss with the supervisor, you prepare the chapter outline, what are you going to put in what chapter, again depending on the university guidelines given. Every university, Center for Graduate Studies, will have printed books, and now it is soft copy online. You have to read properly and understand what actually be there in each chapter, okay? And then only you will start writing. And I said start with something easy. So when you start reading paper, and anything you get the idea from the paper, you start slowly writing for it, okay? So I will cover more things so about it. So let me stop for a while for there. What is in a thesis? Okay, at the beginning, these are the things that you will have at the initial pages. You have a title page, you have an approval sheet where you and supervisor sign. Then you have abstract. In Malaysia, then you have 2 abstract, Bahasa Melayu first, and then you have English. But of course, other countries you will have only English abstract. Okay, you have acknowledgement, dedication, table of contents, list of tables, list of figures, list of abbreviations. These are the initial pages that we have. Then only after that we go into the chapterization. Okay, let me cover a bit on the title. When you are doing a thesis or dissertation, of course, remember there are certain things that you have to be very specific and very careful of when you are selecting a thesis. Okay, um, if you are choosing a title that is not suitable on your academic background, your academic interest, if you choose a topic which is not very good in terms of finding the sources to support and cite availability of literature, and even the specialization that you are in. Say, for example, in your degree and masters, you have studied certain thing, and then in PhD, you have chosen a totally different thing, which that is go with your specialization. You might be suffering a lot. These three are the most important factor that you have to take into account when you decide. You decide on a topic, on a title, or the area of research, your academic interest, availability of literature, and specialization. And of course, the other one, which I did not put it here, the marketability of the degree. There's certain PhDs which do not have demand in the market now. So you have to be up to date. Choose a topic which is updated. Choose a topic that has demand now and in the demand in the future. All right, that has to be also taken care of. Okay, sometimes people and students especially come to us and they will ask us, Prof, I want to do a thesis on it. I say, why? I said, no, because I think this happened and I see this is happening. I said, okay, what is your background? And when you check the background, when you check the academic interest of the student, we look at the availability of literature, then we find the topic is not suitable for the student to be undertaken for PhD thesis. Okay, so the title is very important, very important. Okay, so be careful. And when you write the title, be concise, be precise, very specific, no jargon or acronym to be used. And in Malaysia now, right, the title cannot be more than 15 words. So you have to limit your title within 15 words. And please do not use a study of an investigation of at the beginning. Because when you do a research, it is a study. When you do a research, it is an investigation. So no point putting that in the title. In that way, you can confine yourself within 15 words. So like many times, students will come and talk to us. And since the 15 words are very few, so they find difficult to contain themselves into 15 words of a title. So there are unnecessary things there which can be taken out, and you can make it a good topic and title, something that reflects the whole book. By reading the title, people will know what are things going to be there inside your thesis. All right. So with that little background, let me go to the specific topic. That is chapter 1. Okay, that's chapter 1. So this should be the outlines, suggested outlines. You will have an introduction, background of research, statement of the problem, research objectives, research questions, scope of the study, significance of the study, definition of key terms, and organization of the thesis or report. That's what must be there. Okay, this is what must be there. And I'm going to explain every element of chapter 1 afterwards. Now, let me cover a point here. I see certain students, or some students, they write limitations of the study in chapter 1. So my question is, you have not conducted the study yet. How do you know the limitation of your study? Okay, so what I mean, the student maybe wanted to put in chapter 1 the scope of the study. That's what he wanted to mean. Okay, so that's what we'll cover in the scope of the study. So there's no reason why you should be putting limitations of the study in the chapter 1, whereby you have not conducted the study yet. So the limitations of the study and suggestion for future research should be included in chapter 5, or the last chapter that we have. Okay, so let us look into introduction. So introduction, the first chapter, right, of your thesis. And then name of the chapter is introduction. And then again, you will have introduction at the beginning of the chapter of introduction. Okay. So we said this is where you provide an introduction to the topic of the thesis. You give the context in terms of content of the research project. So you start developing the storyline. You are giving very simple deliberation, explanation, description of the topic, introductory topic. All right. Say, for example, we say the purpose of introduction should be to supply sufficient background information to allow reader to understand, evaluate the results of the present study without needing to refer previous publication on the topic. So you are beginning with certain elements in a write-up that gives the reader of understanding what is going to be there in the thesis. Okay, and the introduction chapter should also provide the rationale for the study. So while you talk about very simple description of what going to be there in the thesis, somewhere in the middle of the later, and that was the end of this subsection, you may cover a bit of rationale why you wanted to do a study on that. In that case, you may cite some references, but this citation has to be carefully chosen. Okay, so it has to provide some kind of more saline background rather than exhaustive review of the literature. So you are not going to put a lot of citation in the introduction chapter. You're not. Okay, you are not. You're going to write your own, and then later you back up with some saline background, more saline background, by citing some of the references in the introduction chapter. So what should you be writing in introduction? So what do you know about the topic? I put a question marks for you to understand. Okay, so you are providing comprehensive and critical review of the major findings of the area, major findings, the key areas, the critical areas that helps you to create the story plot. Because remember, I always say thesis is about telling and selling stories, right? Telling and selling stories. So you have to provide comprehensive and critical review of the major findings. What you don't know. So here you are talking about the gap. What has been done and what has not been done. A little bit of indication, not very deep indication of what has not been done. And then identifying what gaps are, or what gaps in our current understanding of the field are, and why it is important these gaps should be closed. So introduction, already you are giving some hints that there are problem exists. There are some gaps in the literature. There are some gaps in terms of methodology, or there are gaps in terms of practical contextual contents. So in that gap has to be filled in because it is troubling industry, society, or the nation, or the world. Okay, and later towards the end, there should be clear statements summarizing what is known, what is there, and what needs to be learned, and what your thesis aims to achieve. Okay, so you are making a summary towards the end of introduction section or subsection, whereby you will carefully summarize what is done so far and what need to be done and what you wanted to do. All right, because you may not be able to fill up the whole gap that is being found in the literature. So you will have your limitation of your work. So that has to be also mentioned what actually you are going to do. Okay, that's the introduction chapter. Okay, so I'm giving you some example here, writing good introduction. Okay, so we say this is the first paragraph. It should provide a bit background in the present tense, to establish the context, relevance, or the nature of problem, question, or purpose. What is known and what is not known. The second paragraph, you may include the importance of the problem and the unclear issues. What is unknown? So first paragraph is what is known. Second paragraph is what is unknown. Okay. And then last paragraph, you may state the rationale. Why? Why? You need to know what is unknown. Okay. So I've given a simple write-up here. This slide will be shared in my webinar groups, those of you are connected with me. So I'm saying that companies in many countries under criticism of manipulation of business activities. I'm creating the plot, the storyline. Some large organization collapsed recently due to several corporate misconducts, and this has raised serious questions about the effectiveness of different monitoring policies presumed to protect stakeholders' interests. You can see how I'm developing the story. So within very few lines, I have said everything you know. The last sentence, if you see, thus, this research study has started off with the aim of investigating the financial factor affecting CSER reporting with moderating effect of industry sector. So by looking at this simple paragraph, the reader will understand exactly what you are trying to do, and the aid of the thesis, what are the things expected from you. Okay, so that is introduction section. So in the introduction chapter, this will be the first section, what we call introduction of the introduction chapter. Okay, now in some cases there are a group of people, they do not like to see introduction under the introduction chapter, so you may straight go to background of the study. So it is depending on the kind of instruction you get from the university where you are enrolled in. Okay, so if you have that problem of writing introductions, you can straight go to background of the study, and you can raise the similar thing that you have raised in the introduction chapter in the background of the study. But what happens if your university allows an introduction subsection followed by a background of the study? So follow the guideline I've given you on the introduction, then followed by the background of the study. So now you are going to be straight. You are going to introduce the problem, the research problem, okay? And this might require identification of key managerial concern, key theories, the laws and governing rulings, critical incidents or social changes, or the current environmental issues that make the subject critical, okay? So now here you are going to be specific on the problem that you have identified, and you are connecting the problem with issues, already. You are going straight on this. So the questions like, what are the subject area of the study? So in your research, in your thesis, what is the subject area? What is the background of the subject study? So you are now looking at referring into many literature review, talking about who has done what and all that, you are referring that, okay? And why it is important and worthy of study. So now you are proving that this problem that you have identified requires urgent attention from researcher, and that's why you have taken up and chosen this topic to undertake your PhD thesis or your PhD journey. Okay, a bit more background here, some guideline for you. In the background of the research, you have to specifically highlight the background of your research topic, in depth, precise, specific identification of the research background, highlights the importance and weightage of the research in contrast to the national perspective. Now you are coming to a country, okay, where your data is going to come. In many cases, all right, examiners may argue with you that knowledge is universal. The study has been conducted in Australia, US a lot. Then why you have to do a study on this, okay? So when you have that kind of question, you will find it difficult to answer. And that's the reason you will bring your national issues there, because your national background, your national issues are totally different from many countries, from the global context. And that gives you the room to conduct a new study for you, okay? And in the background, you are not giving only citations, okay? You are not only giving the citation. You are also giving evidence, the data from the industry. If you are doing a study, say for example, organizational performance, say in the electronic industry, electronic industry. In that case, you have to provide certain data, some evidence from the industry to back up your argument that there is a need to do a study. And here you are identifying the key stakeholders, which is very important for you, okay? And then you are citing recent literature survey from the global context and your country context where the sample population comes in. Okay, data will be connected. So you are going from global to the regional to the national. That's how the background of the research should be written. Okay, and that's how you prove that your research is very important in your perspective from your country. Okay, but the background not to be mixed with the introduction and the scope of the study. That is a careful statement that I have given for you. While you are writing introduction, make sure your introduction is different from background. Background is very specific to the problem. You are citing recent literature. You are citing contrasting findings from global, national, and regional perspective, and you are giving evidence from your national perspective to back up the storyline that you are creating. Okay, so it is totally different from introduction, and definitely it is different from the scope of the study, which I'm going to discuss afterwards. Okay. The third subsection, okay, the first section is introduction, second section is the background of the study. The third section, of course, the statement of the problem, the most difficult section for a student to write. Okay, the most difficult one. I remember in during my PhD journey, I had to write the problem statement 17 times to convince my supervisors. Every time I wrote, the supervisor said, this part is okay, but you have to rework and edit this part. And that continues until 17 times of writing. The supervisor was convinced that it is a good research problem being written. Okay. So a problem statement is the description of an issue currently existing need to be addressed. We know, right? Problem statement, problem is something that troubles somebody, is a concern in the industry or the nation or the world, something that bothers people, somebody affects performance of people. So we take up that issue that become a problem and we want to do a research on it. So we have a problem statement that describe exactly what's the issue that you are going to cover in your thesis. All right, so this provides basically the context for the research study, and from there later we'll transform research problem into few research questions and then convert it into research objectives. All right, and then from research questions subsequently we will derive into research hypothesis. So this is how important the research problem is. Okay, so the research problem actually the focal point of any research. A well articulated statement of problem establishes the foundation of everything that you follow on in your research. All right, it's like when you go to the doctor, the identification of the problem, the real problem, that will follow through. If the doctor feels that giving medication enough, he will just give you medication, that's it. If not enough, he might ask you to do some clinical tests, one test and followed by another test, followed by another test, until and unless the doctor is confirmed the problem that they are having, right? So it is like that. So based on the problem identified, it follows on. So in your thesis, the research problem that you have identified, and you put it as a statement of research problem. Based on this become the nucleus of research. From here, everything will be revolving around. It's like when a patient going to see a doctor, it all depends on what is identified. Based on that, the treatment starts. Everything revolving the problem being identified. Okay. So in a statement of problem, possibly you have to apply the five W's, right? Who, what, where, when, and why. Sort of, so if anybody reads the statement of the problem, should be able to get the answer of the question like who is going to be benefited, who is suffering, whom are you going to collect the data, so where is the sample, right? When it is happening, when are you collecting the, why are you doing it, the importance of everything there in a research problem statement. All right, so we said the statement of a problem statement should logically, it follow logically from what has been set forth in the background of the problem. So you are now connecting the background of the study. Remember, in the background, you portray what is done and what is not done. And then you support it with some industry data. Now here, you're following up with, right? You're following up with some more specific statements on that, okay? So you have to present a clear and precise statement of the central question of the research formulated to address the need. The problem must be reflected to your title. Now the question comes in. Remember, you have a title. Your problem statement should be reflecting the title. Or, on other way, your title must reflect the research problem that you have identified. Okay. So the problem must not be answerable by yes or not. It must be arranged in the flow of documentation because it is going to be a book, right? So research is a systematic process is followed one after another sequence, and finally a conclusion is being drawn. So if you identify a research question, yes or no, and somebody can just answer it, then it is not a research problem. You do not require to conduct a research. A problem that is identified where the answer is not available, or maybe the answer is available, but the answers are contradictory. The solutions are contestable. The solutions are not consistent. All right. So you need to do a new study. So you have to prove that the problem is worthy for you to undertake a research during your PhD study. Okay. So later we'll connect the problem statement with the objectives. All right. So later we say, right, that we specific objectives of this study. So that could be the end part of your research problem statement. So you will conclude your research problem by telling research reader the comprehensive objective, the specific objective. So you go straight to the point. Under this under this background, the thesis, or the current study aims to achieve, then you say to differentiate the effect, to quantify, to characterize, whatever. So you have a conclusion of the research problem that basically tells people what actually you are going to do, the main theme of your research. Okay. And this one, many of you are familiar with me. When you are writing research problem, if you do this way from the literature and the industry, that would be easier for you to write. Remember, this point is very important. Please remember, in the research problem, all issues must be highlighted. Okay. Now, research problem is one, but there could be many issues that create that problem. So you have a dependent variable, that is your research problem, and all issues are your independent variables. Okay, all issues are independent variables. So meaning that in the research problem statement or research problem, you should be able to tell the reader what are the issues, meaning that what are the independent variables already being identified. Okay, and that's the reason I always recommend students write chapter 2 first, then chapter 3, then only come back and write chapter 1. That's my philosophy. All right. So student doing PhD with me, they will be writing chapter 2 first because you read papers first. Then I say, okay, once you identify variables and theories, all right, why don't you go to chapter 3 and develop the theoretical framework and write up the research method and come back to chapter 1? Possible. Or the most pragmatic way would be complete research, literature review chapter 2, and then come back and write research problem in chapter 1, research objective, research question, then go to chapter 3. Okay, so either approach is okay. Chapter 2 first, literature review, then chapter 1, then proceed to chapter 3. Or chapter 2, proceed to chapter 3, then come back to chapter 1. Because in theoretical framework, those variables that you have identified, those relationship would be each research questions and each research problem. So if you write chapter 3, then chapter 1 writing would be even more easier. All right. So either approach can be followed. 2 first, then 1, and then 2, then 3, then coming back to 1. Either one is okay. So this one is coming from literature review, and next one, the template that I have provided, this is coming from the industry. That's what I said. In the introduction, you introduce the topic. In the background, you support the data from the industry. And in the research problem, we identify all the issues, all independent variables, moderating, mediating variables you have, if you have been, and also some industrial issue supporting with some citation, all that have to be there. Okay. So that's the first 3 sections. Very important section for a thesis. Background, introduction, background, and research problem. Let me go to the next one, the 4th one. The research questions. The research questions are basically, the research problem is converted or transformed into research questions. Remember, I said all those issues that is affecting the problem should be highlighted, meaning that dependent variable is your research problem, and all issues are independent and moderating, mediating variable. This all should be highlighted in the research problem. So after that, we convert them into question form, specific, measurable questions. And these questions must have answers in chapter 5 and chapter 4. Anyone read your thesis in chapter 1, like people like us, as an external examiner or internal examiner, we will look into a research problem. Straight we go to research question, then we'll go to your hypothesis, and then we'll go to chapter 4 or chapter 5 to see whether the logical sequence, the flow is there or not. Okay, so research questions must be a transformation of research problem, and from there we will convert into research objectives. Okay, now I have shown you equal number of research questions and objectives, but that may not be case at all time. There could be 2 research objectives and 4-5 research questions. All right, it could be different. So that one I'm showing you here. You may have a specific objective, and to cover that specific objective, you may have 2 research questions, and then you have another research objective, 1 research question, and you have another research question, and for that you have 2 research objectives. It's possible, okay, 2 research questions. So you may have less objectives and more research questions. Less research objective, more research questions. It could be there. So that gives you the answer. Should we tally the number of research questions and research objectives? Not necessarily. Most of the vivas that we attend, students have a tendency of telling, 4 research objective, 4 research question, or 5 research objective, 5 research question. Not necessarily. Sometimes you may have just 2 research objective, but you may have 5-6 research questions. It depends on the nature of study that you do. Say for example, in the first objective, you put the factors affecting the dependent variable, and you have 5 factors. So based on the 5 factors, you have 5 research questions possible. Okay, so it is not necessarily you have to tally the number of research questions and number of research objectives. All right, let me move into the next section. So first section was introduction, then background of the study, then research problem, research question, research objectives. Now we move into another very important section of a thesis, that is significance of the study. Now, please remember, you have not conducted the research yet. So you cannot tell people what are the contributions you are making. You cannot. You do not know exactly, So here, basically, you are going to prove to people why it is so important to do a research, the importance of the research, why it is so significant for you to do a research on this area. All right. So we keep the 3 areas in mind. Theoretical area. So you have done literature review, you have found the gap, so you are filling up the gap of the literature. So one of the significance could be, you may say the existing theory is not adequate, is not enough to solve this problem. Therefore, you need to extend the theory. You need to modify the theory. One theory is not enough, so therefore you got to integrate 2 or 3 theories together. So that is going to be your theoretical significance of this study. The methodology being used by previous researchers, you found that the methodologies adopted is not suitable in the context of your study. Therefore, you feel that there should be a different methodology in this context. So you get a methodology from another context and applying in your research context. That is a significance. And the third one could be in terms of policies, procedures, law, all those aspects. You see the current policies, regulation that you have. Possibly regulations are there, but not in implementation, poor implementation of policies. So your research will strengthen the argument why this policy should be implemented. Or you have to say the policies and your context is not enough, is not adequate, not appropriate. So at the end of your research, you will propose certain policies, recommendation, certain practices that can be adopted from other industry or from other countries. That's what you are going to do here. Significance of this, it is not contribution of this study. Contribution of the study will be chapter 5 after conclusion of the research. Okay, so here you are going to basically justify why this topic, this problem requires attention. Okay, and here you give key contribution of your research, key significance in terms of theoretical, methodological, and practical or contextual. That's what you have to highlight here. All right, after significance of the study, next section would be the scope of the study. And here many students will have problem. Okay, this is a very important chapter also. Specifically, you are highlighting the parameters of the research. Okay, first scope in terms of area of research. So now you are showing a knowledge boundary in terms of knowledge. So in one research, It's a small area that you choose to conduct the research. That's what I have to tell people. My research is confined, or this study is confined into looking at factors affecting job satisfaction. Say, for example, this theory looking into factors affecting intention to use or adopt certain things. And that is number one. It has to be mentioned there. So that when you present, examiners cannot ask you question outside the scope. You can tell them, sorry, prof, this is outside of my scope. That was not my scope of study, okay? Scope in terms of unit of analysis, where the data is going to come from. Who is going to give you the data? It has to be mentioned here that your data will come from individual customers, or your data is going to come from organization. So that is going to be the scope of the study, all right? The third, you have to also mention the geographical coverage, where the study is going to take effect. Is it going to be in the whole country? Is it going to be regional? Is it going to be the whole world that is going to come in? Or even it is going to be few districts of your country, or few divisions of your country, or few states of the country. That has to be mentioned in the scope of the study. And also importantly, in terms of depth and breadth of the research. And that's where the difference of master's and PhD. In a master's study, we look into the breadth of the research. So they do not go deeper into the topic that they go for the breadth. Okay, so we do not really look for new contribution of knowledge. Rather, they contribute in terms of policy making and all that. But in a PhD, the breadth is shorter and depth is high. It has to be a high depth. Okay, a smaller topic, a small area, but you go depth into the area. So that has to be mentioned also, the breadth and depth of your research. Okay. So you're saying it is always advisable to narrow down a topic. Narrow down does not mean less work. Rather, it tells you that you are dealing with a small, very special case in a very small scale, because in one research you cannot solve everything. Rather, you are going to solve only one problem. Okay. So we are saying one cannot be solving everything under the sun. So scope is vital. So in the scope, you have to mention that. And this is what is misunderstood by many students. They will write limitation of the research in chapter 1, as I said earlier. Okay, you don't have to. You have to provide a good write-up on the scope of your work, and that will help you on the questions of your limitation later in chapter 5. Okay. Okay, once you have written your scope of this study, the next chapter, many students will forget to include this definition of terms. You have to define all important terms that is used in this thesis, in your research. Preferably, all variables definitely must be defined. All variables must be defined. Okay, dependent variable, all independent variables, moderating, mediating, if any, even control variables, all should be defined in support of citations. You are not defined by yourself. Huh? In chapter 1, you are getting people's definition, bookish definition. You're taking from book or research articles, defining them. These are the important variable and these are the definition of the variable, so that the reader will have a feeling of the issues, because each independent variable is an issue. So you will understand the issues better. Okay, these are the issues and this is the definition of issue, and that's going to be covered in this research. And finally, in chapter 1, you must have this subsection, organization of the thesis. If you are submitting for proposal defense, then you will write what it contains. Chapter 1, 2, 3, right? Introduction, literature review, theoretical framework, research methodology. But if you are submitting for final viva voce, then you have to outline the whole thesis. Chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 9 chapters. You have to describe what each chapter includes. All right. Like I've given you example. Chapter 1 contains the background of the study, research question, research objectives, significance of the study, scope of the study, definition of key terms. Chapter 2 include, for example, student doing a research on fintech service, adoption literature, relevant theories, models, discussion on independent literature, underpinning theory, and research gap finally. All right. And chapter 3 comprises this. That's how you will have to describe at the end. Okay. So to sum up, let me sum it up now. So we'll start with introduction, then background of the study, statement of the problem or research problem, research questions, research objectives, significance of the study, scope of the study, and then definition of key terms, and finally organization of the report. All right. So that's where I will end my presentation, and now I will bring um, students, those are with me online, um, on the stage, and I will provide them the opportunity to ask question directly. And those of you who are with me online, YouTube live, I have seen many questions, so I will take those questions from the live chat box, and I will answer the questions to you. Okay. So now I open it up for um, the live participants. Let us start with the sisters. Maybe Sister Rabaya Jaman. Rabaya Jaman. Please unmute your microphone. So if you have any specific question, please, you are most welcome to ask now.
Okay, Prof, I have a question regarding the scope of the study. When we determine our scope of the study, what matters? That how could we um, uh, uh, how could we think that this scope of the study should be used in our thesis? Does it requires any SLR, systematic literature review, or any types of citation?
Well, scope of the study definitely does not require any citations, not at all. It's all coming from you, is your study scope. So you have to look at your research problem identified. You know exactly what is the problem. And I always love to give example of doctors and patients because it's easier to understand. When a patient going to see a doctor and his blood sugar is high, and then he will ask the patient, is your father having diabetics, your mother having diabetics, and when did you get it? Is it continuously you are having it and coming, on and off coming? So from there he determines the testing to be done is only the blood test, right? Blood sugar test. He's not going to do anything more than that. Am I right? So
Yes,
his
Prof.
scope already being defined. So that's why if a patient coming and complaining of stomach pain, and then you do the endoscopy, colonoscopy, cannot find anything, then do certain other tests, and then you find something else. So that will help the doctor to put it in a scope. That is the scope for the doctor to determine what kind of medicine to be given. So it depends on the research problem that you have identified. So looking at the research problem, then you see what knowledge coverage is there. Then you look at the data collection, who could be your sample. Then look at where can you collect the data. That's how you put it in the scope of the study. Is that clear,
Thank you,
sister?
Prof. Yes,
Welcome.
Prof.
All right. Who is next? So who is like to ask another question? I give you the first opportunity, then later
I
I'm
have a
going
question.
to. Sure, please.
Hello,
Please,
Prof.
please continue.
Okay, I want to find out what is the difference between unit of analysis and then the population of the study. Is it the same unit of analysis and then population of the study?
Okay, it's a very what should I say? Very very complex question that troubles many students. When you say population of study, meaning anybody who can be our respondents, they are considered population. And from there, we'll have the sampling frame, and then we have the sampling method, and then we choose certain number of population to be in the study. Am I right?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay. So in your research, those people are selected for your study. They become unit of analysis for you.
Okay. Okay.
So it's not the total population. If you take total population as a census for your study, so the whole population become your unit of analysis. But if you are taking 386, if you follow Masakaran or Casey and Morgan, 384 or 386, that's the number. Say you have taken 400. That 400 is your unit of analysis, individual. If data coming from individual, individual is your unit of analysis. If data coming from organization, organization become unit of analysis. Is that clear, brother?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Prof, in this regard, I have a question. If
Yes.
my sample is top management, if I want to collect data from the top management, so top management is my unit of analysis?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you,
People
Prof.
who represents the top management. When you say top management, it represents many people. The CEO, the MD, vice presidents. There could be many there. Those people all together become your population, and you may not collect data from everyone. If you get 2 from the top, from each organization, it's fine, right? They represent the organization. So top
Yes.
leadership become your unit of analysis.
Thank you, Prof.
Prof, I have a number of questions.
Yes.
Prof,
Please,
can you hear me,
yes.
sir?
Yes.
Okay, sir. Yes, I have a number of questions that borders on almost all the aspects of chapter 1. In my university, for instance, introduction is the topic for chapter 1. So it is not a subsection. So we start from background to the study. And it has been argued so many times that all variables should be discussed in the background to the study. So I want to ask you, sir, that can we discuss all the variables right from background to the study? That is number one.
Okay. Let me handle
Can I
this
go ahead,
first.
sir?
Yeah. In background, you are going to basically establish the storyline. When you watch a movie, be Bollywood movie or Hollywood movie, if you watch any movie, first few minutes, what they do, they create the plot. They create the line, the storyline. That's what you are going to do in your background of the study. So you are not going to identify exactly the issues, all issues, meaning that variables, independent and modality mediating variables. That one will be done under research problem. In the background of the study, what you'll do is you will show what has been done and what has not been done, what is done and what has not been done. That is from literature, and then supported data evidence from the industry to create the storyline for your thesis. Okay, or he is out of the line, is it? Or he's no more there. He has another question. Anyway, we move to Brother Masood. Any question from you, Brother Masood? Or any clarification?
Prof, this session was very nice and excellent. So I have no questions, but I have I need a small clarification from you. As we know that, first of all, doing a research, as you have already said, that we have to search for a problem. We have some certain problem, and after that we go for question or objective, because when you showed us in the content, we have seen that sequentially objective, then research questions. Again, when you have been talking with about, also when we have been having the classes over here in advanced research methodology or research methodology in UPM also, they focused on first research question, then objective also. But finally, when I was having a 3 months program in Oxford University from Malaysia, I am attending here. So Prof asked me, can you tell me that your research question should be first or research objective should be first? That is my question to you, Prof.
All right. Actually, it's a very simple question. We academics, we have our own differences. Some academic will prefer objectives to be first and then the questions. Some will prefer question first and then the objectives. Basically, for me, I'll look into thesis, the research questions, and then I'll go at the end of the thesis and find where the answers are there. Easier for me to identify. If I look at objectives and I want to see whether objectives are achieved or not, is very difficult. And for that sense, I will never even read the objective. When I become external or internal, I never read the objective. I'll look at the research problem, I'll look at the research questions. And then I'll go into chapter 5 to see whether the questions have been answered or not. Okay, but of course there are many academic, they believe objective should be number first and then it goes to research question. I don't disagree with that. Okay, so we have different agreement on. So
Prof, for my clarification,
yes.
So can I add something? Yeah, Prof,
Sure.
I want some clarification from you. Is that to me, I am not a very good researcher or whatever. I am just learning from you. So thing is that if I don't have some certain objectives, how can I reflect it through questions? This is my opinion. When I have some objective, then I can go through some questions to get the answers from the respondents, of course, participants who are, I am taking maybe structured questionnaires or through some, qualitative research, whatever. So my objective is first, then I'm going to make some questions. Thank you, Prof. This is my observation.
No, I won't disagree with you. Uh, but when you are writing a very good research background, remember in research background, you have already said what has been done or has not been done. The gap has been identified. And then you have given supported data from the industry. So the case is established. And then I said, I have recommended when you are writing research problem, make sure you identify all issues and it's being highlighted there. All independent variable moderating meeting, all been identified and being mentioned. And then I'm saying that then you convert research problem into research question. And that's why I'm saying from research problem, you go straight to the research question. That should not be an issue. But if you feel that from background of the study, the way you have written, research objective should be written first and then it's more convenient for you, you can go ahead. There's no problem at all. It's a very small matter.
Thank you, Prof.
Whether I put objective first or research question first. Personally, I
Thank you,
prefer
Prof.
question first, then objective. You can always prefer to put objective first, research question the next. It's not a problem at all.
Yeah, Prof. The consequence comes when we
Prof, I lost connection
have
earlier.
Yes.
So when the questions is coming like that, so it back a lot. Thank you so much, Prof. I got your answer. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if you have an external, say for example, you have an external or internal, and the external insists research objective first, research question second, just agree on it. If you get somebody, he say no, research question first, research objective, just agree on it. It's a very simple matter. Okay. All right.
Okay, Prof. Please, I
Yes.
have about 2 questions more.
Sure. Please.
While you are, yes, when you were presenting, you talked briefly about hypothesis. So I want to ask that I think hypothesis should come in chapter 1 before or after the hypothesis. And specifically, what is your take on null hypothesis? In my university, for instance, and faculty, we prefer the usage of null hypothesis and not alternate hypothesis. So it is when we reject hypothesis that we agree that that hypothesis is significant. So I would like to ask what your take is on the usage of null hypothesis. And
There are two
finally,
issues. Now, let me answer this one first. There are two issues here. Number one,
Okay.
should we include hypothesis in chapter 1? Hypothesis is constructed. Hypothesis is constructed from the research framework. Do you have a research framework in chapter 1? You don't have. Then how can you
no.
state hypothesis? Hypothesis is just not stating hypothesis. Hypothesis should be constructed with the support of literature. That's what I'm going to do in chapter 3 when I'm going to cover. I will show you how hypothesis should be constructed. You have to cite many literature that these researchers have done a study and they found this factor has significant effect. Therefore, the following hypothesis is proposed. There's a way of doing it. You cannot simply just put the framework and then after that, this is my statement 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is not the way of writing thesis. For research paper, may be okay, but not for thesis. It has to be constructed. So if research hypothesis to be constructed, then how can I put it in chapter 1? And that's what I have seen in some of the student thesis. They put hypothesis chapter 1. And I ask them why. And they cannot answer me that question. I say, how do you know that assumption, the relationship between variables, before constructing the model or framework, or the research framework or thesis framework, theoretical framework or conceptual framework? How do you know the variables? And you assume some relationship, which is not appropriate. I personally do not support to have definitely hypothesis in chapter 1. That's number one. Because it has to be constructed with support of literature. We have not done literature review yet. How can you put the hypothesis chapter 1? That is my argument, okay? Number 2, should it be null? Alternative hypothesis. If you are talking to a mathematician or a statistician, he will say it must be null hypothesis. That's what they'll say. Okay, but social science, we don't put null hypothesis, we put alternative. Why? Because we review literature and we find that researchers found this factor has relationship with that factor. This factor has positive relationship with that factor. Or this factor has negative relationship with that factor. And that's what we assume. So if I say that this factor has significant effect from the theory, and I say no relationship and hypothesis, it doesn't seem to be very rational, right? So for statistician or mathematician, they will insist it's supposed to be null hypothesis. So in your university, in case, if they insist on null hypothesis, I would advise, I'm not saying advise, I would recommend or suggest you put both null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis to avoid getting into trouble, because some people may still come say, why is the alternative hypothesis? If you say no relationship but literature say got relationship, so you are doing contradictory statement, right? You are making contradictory statements. Brother Femi, you are out of the stage, so I'm not sure whether you listen to me. So I said if a statistician,
Yes, I'm
mathematician,
listening.
they will ask you to add uh, null hypothesis. But social science, business will say no, it has to be alternative hypothesis. To solve that problem, possibly we can have both. You put null
Good.
hypothesis
Okay.
and also the alternative hypothesis in order to solve that problem. Okay, I have encountered that when I attended an external examiner for economics student. I see they put null hypothesis, but when it comes to business management, it's always alternative hypothesis. Okay, so there are cases where you will see an examiner will come in and say, "Hey, how come we put alternative? Where is the null hypothesis?" And there'll be also examiner come and say, "Hey, why you put alternative? Why is null hypothesis?" So that kind of things are there. For business, social science, majority academician has agreement. We put alternative hypothesis because we develop hypothesis from the literature. The factor has effect. That's why I put it in the assumption. Therefore, it has to be null hypothesis. But if it's going to mathematician or statistician, they will say no, it has to be null hypothesis. To solve the problem in your institution, you can put both null and alternative. That could be a good solution. Okay.
Okay, Prof.
All right.
Finally, significance.
Yes.
Some researchers say you need to highlight those who benefit from the study before you now explain how each of them will benefit from the study. So, but from your presentation, I think I got some new ideas of what significance is all about. So that particular stance, how do you see it, sir? That you should
Yeah.
mention that maybe government will benefit
The
other
way
researchers, students,
understood. The
and the
way I have
likes.
done it, yeah, the way I have done the presentation is not different from you. I have given you some clues to make it very specific. Your study will not only contribute to very specific stakeholders like industry, because your PhD degree is an academic degree. So when you have an academic degree, it has to be have new knowledge contribution. So that has to be mentioned. The significance is that you are going to modify the theory, you are going to extend the theory, you are going to integrate theory. That has to be there. And then in terms of methodology, in case your research have some methodological implications, significance, you got to mention that. And finally, coming to the other stakeholders, when coming to the knowledge contribution, it has its stakeholders, right? Academic, researchers, very specific. When it comes to methodology, also has a stakeholder, the researcher like you and me, the academics who use it. Okay. Then when third section, I say practical or contextual contribution, then you have industry, you have customer, you have all those data, related people there. So I'm highlighting all the stakeholders, but I'm highlighting in a different way than you. So I'm doing it a more systematic, more structured way, rather than just highlighting the stakeholders. Do you follow me?
Thank you, Prof.
Do you agree with me?
Yes, I do, Prof. Absolutely.
All right. Maybe I take the last question from the live, those of you, then I have to go to the chat box. There are many questions there. Those of you in the online, please put your question in the chat box. I'm going to answer. I will try my best to answer all the questions. The last question from the live group.
All right, Prof. Please,
Yes.
what about expected outcome?
What
In
about
chapter 1? Expected outcome. Like when you're
expected
writing.
That is the significance. That is
Okay.
the significance of this study.
Okay.
Yeah. You can write in different way. If you put the expected outcomes from this study, then you don't have to write significance of this study.
Okay.
If your university insists you have to write contribution of this study, then do not write significance of this study. Just one. Either significance of this study outcomes, expected outcomes of the study, or contributions of the study. All three speaks the same. No problem at all.
Because you said earlier on that contributions should be written in chapter 5.
At the end. But certain university, they said contributions should be in chapter 1. So I do not want to go against that university rule, okay?
Okay.
I would
Thank
prefer you to write significance of the study, because contribution only comes once the study is completed. Then you write contribution at the end, specific contribution that you are making from your research.
Okay.
Is it
Thank
clear?
you, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Let me look at the questions online. Those of you are there. It's just salam. Okay. Okay. What is the difference between PhD and master thesis? Let me put the question there. This is the first question. What is the difference between master's and PhD thesis? I think I have already explained this when I talked about the scope of the study. Master thesis is more on breadth. PhD thesis is more on depth. In master thesis, because you are on the breadth, on the superficial at the top, right? So we are not expecting any new knowledge contribution. PhD is more on depth, so we expect new knowledge contribution. And that's where many PhD students struggle in the final viva versus session, the question of new knowledge contribution. If you fail to show any new knowledge contribution, you will not get the PhD. Even recently, I attended a PhD final viva versus session. The student, the way it is written, the new knowledge contribution was not there. But I do not want to fail the student. So I tell the student, you have new knowledge contribution. Make sure I have given the suggestion, these are the way you have to write, so that your contribution is highlighted. If no new knowledge contribution, no PhD. Please keep that in mind. But for master holders, for master degree, you do not need new knowledge contribution. Basically, we want to see that you are a researcher. You can do a research in masters. So you have taken a study from somewhere, you have emulated, and then you have done a study. It should be fine, okay? So that's the first question. What is the next question? Okay, got. What about research motivation? That is the significance of the research, right? What motivated you to do the study, right? Why it is so important to do the study? Okay, so again, it's going to significance of the study. How to use moderator in the research? Wow, that is a different question. That is for chapter 3. So please wait for the third session. I will cover that. This is not covering in chapter 1. Okay, so I will answer this when I explain chapter 3 for you. Okay, what is the difference between introduction and background? I think I have explained quite well. I have tried my best to tell you what is introduction. Introduction is to just introduce the topic. Okay, say for example, you are planning to get married, and then a girl is introduced to you. So when the girl is introduced to you, what sort of things will be told to you? How old the girl is, am I right? Possibly a picture of the girl will be shared with you, and a bit of family background. That's it. That is introduction, introducing the girl. By looking at the age and the photo, if you are more interested, then you go and see the girl. That is the background of the study. Okay. Now we are going a bit more detail of it. Okay, we are going more detail into it. That is background. Are you following me? So that's the difference between introduction and background. When you go into the classroom, first day you meet a friend. Introduction, introducing, you are knowing each other. Going through 1 year together or 3 years together in university. Or you know everything of your friend. That is the background. You know all of his background. But first day was just an introduction. So that's how we differentiate the introduction and background sections in a research in chapter 1. Okay. I hope it is very clear. Okay. Okay, next question. What is the maximum page for chapter 1? It's a difficult question. Okay, next question. What is the maximum page for chapter 1? It's a difficult question. Okay, next question. What is the maximum? I don't know why there is a... Okay, it's not... No background now, right? You can listen to me, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So maximum page for PhD, it is expected to have minimum 200 pages. Please keep in mind, 200 pages. My PhD thesis was 198 pages, excluding the references. So when I was submitting, one of my friend was doing PhD with me. He said, "Brother Amin, why your thesis is so lean? Not many pages." My thesis
Oh,
was 500 pages. He said his thesis is 500 pages. I say, brother, I am a different kind of guy. I only talk what is important, what to be said. In my life, I talk less. So not many people, some people may not like me because I talk less. So I'm not talkative, all right? When I give call webinar, I talk a lot. But when it come to personal life, even sometimes my wife will, you know, uh, complain that I talk less in the house. So I write what is important. I don't write extra redundant thing. So this is what is expected. Okay, 200 pages. Brother Femi, I think you have to mute your microphone. Uh, you have to mute your microphone. Okay, so I would say that background would be like, sorry, introduction would be like 2 pages. Background would be 3-4 pages. Research problem would be 7 to 10 pages. About 7 pages, 5 to 7 pages. Research objective, research question, two together, 1 page. Scope would be like half a page. Significant would be 2 pages long. So altogether will come about 25 to 30 pages, not more than that. Okay, I don't expect more than that. Okay, so this is all depends on you how you write. Okay, that's how chapter one. Okay, how many pages? Chapter one. I said about 30 to 35 pages maximum. Okay. I just realized my thesis has 20 words. It's beyond maximum words required. Okay. Look at the instructions and guidelines of your university. In Malaysia, all universities now they look at 15 words, right? But the Masood? In UPM also, right? 15 words.
Yeah, Prof. UPM 20.
20. Okay. Some
20 words.
universities have 20, like University Uttara Malaysia, my university 15 words. Cannot be even one word more. They are very particular on it. Okay. So 15, 20, I think 20 would be maximum. More than 20 would be like too much, and you lose focus on the questions. All right. Can research a coin hypothesis happen? That question I have already answered. What's the difference between background and research problem? Very clear. Huh? Background is you are going deeper into the issue and you are telling exactly what are the issues affecting what are the things have been done and what has not been done. The research gap is being identified. And then that gap is being defined in the research problem chapter, whereby you identify all the issues, all the variables, and then you write research problem. Okay, I think I have answered quite a lot. Okay. How many sub-problem needed in chapter 1? Your research is done based on one problem. And one problem is caused by many issues. If you tell every issue is a sub-problem, then it all depends on how many issues you have. Okay. I do not really expect more than 5, 6. I don't. 5, 6 independent variable is more than enough. And then you can introduce one moderating mediating for the PhD would be just nice. Okay. So if you're having a research problem is a dependency, for example, customer satisfaction, job satisfaction, something adoption, intention to use, those sort of things that we look at, farm value in accounting, finance, and all sort of things. So you have a main theme that is your research problem, and then you have few issues that contribute to that research problem. Those issues become sub problem. If you say sub problem, I'm saying issues, but if you say sub problem, you make it a sub problem. So you can have 4, 5, 6, not more than that. Okay. Next question. Is there any relationship between research justification and research significance? It's basically the same. Either you write justification of the research, you write importance of the research, or you write significance of the research. It's the same. Okay. This question I have answered, right? Whether you need to have equal number of research question objectives. In my presentation, I have highlighted. I have said that not necessarily. You may have less objectives, more research questions. Because questions has to be very specific. Question got to be smart, right? We know it's smart, right? It's specific, measurable, achievable, time bound, and what? Realistic, right? So that is, we always touch it with objective. We say objective should be smart, right? But in the research thesis, rather, I will say the smart should be connected to the research question, because each research question should be answerable. Okay, and the time bound is also there. It has to be realistic so that you can collect data and answer the research questions. Please share the video with us. The video is already in my YouTube channel. The link you have joined, you click that link, is there. It is going to be in my YouTube channel. Those of you who are not subscriber of YouTube channel, I don't promote my YouTube channel. It's up to you. Platform for research and development. If you subscribe, automatically you will be notified when the new video is on. Like today's session, those of you are subscriber, you are given notification. Today there's going to be a live session. Okay, so you can subscribe, and the video is there. You can watch. And even if you go to YouTube channel, you put my name. You just type Dr. Aminul Islam. The slide, the video would be there. If you write chapter 1, how to write chapter 1, Dr. Aminul Islam is going to be there. If you go to PRD is going to be there. All videos are there. So this is going to be 106 number video in my video channel. Okay. So basically, I have everything in my channel for a PhD student. If you listen carefully one by one, everything is there. Those are things are not there. I'm going to add it now. So this part was not there. What to write in chapter 1, 2, 3, 5. So this is I'm doing now. I have already got all spaces things in my YouTube channel. Smart PLS, next session going to the second session. So I'm going to cover everything in Smart PLS. Followed by, I'm going to cover Stata, Software for Accounting, Finance, Economics. Followed by AMOS. So I have all that in my plan. So that in one place, a PhD student can get everything. Okay, so that is already there. Plan is already there. And the slide for this presentation, I'm going to put it, that's beneath of my video in the YouTube channel. Just under my video, in the chat box, I will put the slides for you if you are interested to get the slide. Okay, that one I'll do it for you. Okay. Next question is still confused between introduction and background. I think I have given a very good example of a girl being introduced with a boy for marriage, or when you are going to the classroom, getting introduction, and later you are getting in the background and all that. I think it should be clear. Okay. How to differentiate between Western good governance, Islamic governance. They are two totally different things. Totally different thing. Okay, you can definitely you will definitely find a lot of things on Western governance. Theories are there, policies are there, Islamic governance theories are there, practices are there. So you can have different ones. So I don't think there is any problem with finding the differentiation between these two. Okay, it's a good question. Is it important to test hypothesis in all cases? Not really. Not really. If you are doing a qualitative study, there's no hypothesis. Rather, you will complete your study by proposing some hypothesis, by proposing assumptions. And we, qualitative researchers, will take up those assumptions and test it by collecting data. So therefore, if you are doing a qualitative study, it is not necessarily for you to have hypothesis. But again, let me remind you this. There are cases where examiner insists there must be a hypothesis, even in a qualitative study. So, my brothers, sisters, please understand this. When you are going for a job interview, your purpose is to get the job. So, if the panel members are wrong, still you have to agree with that in order to get the job. You follow me? In a PhD thesis viva, if you feel you are right but examiner is wrong, please accept it. You accept that you are wrong and the examiner is right. Why? You need the degree. Let the examiner pass you. And after that, when you finally submit, who is going to sign your thesis? You or your examiner? You and your supervisor. You and your supervisor, not the examiner. So you tell your supervisor, Prof, during the session the examiner was wrong, and tell your supervisor why the examiner was wrong. Then your supervisor will say, okay, this is true, it is not, he was not right or she was not right, so we'll take out that from the thesis. Final signature is from student and supervisor. Do you follow me? Do not get into argument with examiners, board of examiners, the panel member. Do not, never. I have a student. I had a student who completed PhD, now working very well, from Jordan. During the final viva versus session, he had heated argument with the external examiner. And I was the supervisor. I do not have any right to speak in the final viva session. So I took politely. I asked the chairman, "Can I say something?" The chairman said, "Please proceed." So I told my student, "You shut your mouth. You are wrong. The examiner is right. So you shut your mouth and keep quiet." Because I have to save my student. He was getting into trouble, and the examiner may just get angry with him and fail him or give him major correction. So I said, just shut your mouth. You are wrong. Let the examiner continue. So that's what you have to do. When you are fighting in a battlefield, sometimes you always do not fight. Sometimes you compromise, right? When you negotiate, sometimes you have to give, some you have to take. Some give and take. It has to be there. Even with the examiner, sometimes they could be wrong, and yet you have to accept it for the purpose of mitigating and passing your viva voce session. Do you follow me?
Yes, Prof.
All right. So nothing is so big job, in academic world. We may have differences. You are totally right, and somebody say that you are wrong. So what can you do? You cannot go and fight, right? Okay, this one I think I have mentioned about it. Distinction between problem statement and research action. I think it's very clear. In the problem statement, you are identifying all issues that is causing the problem. And research rational, you are telling people why it is so important to do a study. I don't think I have to explain more, okay? Under the job demand theory, workload is one of the dimensions of demand. So my question, workload would be IV, job demand is IV. I think from your question, the answer is already there, right? The job demand is DV, right? Job demand is DV. Workload is one of the dimension of job demand. What does it mean? Workload is independent variable, okay? Job demand. Issues that contribute to the problem, issues that make the problem. So workload is one of it that contributes to the job demand, okay? So job demand is dependent and workload is independent, okay? Please share the attendance link. I'm sorry for chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this presentation. I'm not going to give you any cert. A lot of works you may not understand. A lot of works to be done. So for these, I'm not going to give you any cert. It's just a teaching and learning session, okay? Just transfer of knowledge, sharing session with you, all right? I may not be correct in everything, so I will explain based on my experience of supervising students and my experience as internal, external examiner, as well as chairman of the sessions. So based on that, I'm just sharing and then setting some kind of perspective that may help you to complete, write up, and defend your thesis in the viva voce session or proposal defense effectively. That was my purpose. I think I have covered all the questions from the chat box. Unless if anybody from the live stage, the final question, anyone, one or two questions.
Prof, I want to find out if it is possible for us to send you the chapter 1, what we have done so far, for you to have a look at it.
You have to understand, I am just one individual. If too many, because this is going to be the YouTube, and if I say yes, then everybody starts sending thesis to me. That will create a lot of problem. Your supervisors may not like it. Some of the supervisors may not like it. You have to work closely with your supervisor. But still, if you want me to do a check on your draft, I would prefer when you have completed chapter 1 to 3 and you are ready for proposal defense. That time, if you want to go through, I can go through. But not chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, one by one. That is impossible. I am like you, an individual. I got many other jobs. Every day, my brother, every day I receive WhatsApp from many of your friends. checking this, checking that, and I reply almost everyone. I try my best, taking time and responding. When the whole day I don't find time before I go to bed, even after going to bed, I will still respond. Okay, so you have to think of myself. You put yourself in my place, because I got 4 webinar groups. I got 1,000 students connected with me, and then my WhatsApp number is being shared in many places, in LinkedIn and Facebook. So many students communicate, even though they are not in my WhatsApp group. Okay, so when you have completed chapter 1 to 3, I'm going for final proposal defense. Then if you share with me and you want some comments, I can give you, no problem. But not chapter by chapter, please.
Thank you.
Okay. I
Prof.
think there is okay, Brother Masood, let me get one question from the. It's a good question. Lokundash said that underpinning theory is necessary to match DV with underpinning theory and DV knowledge contribution. Of course, the DV is the main theme of your research. Okay, your research problem is your dependent variable DV. It has to be supported by theory. Okay. Now, there could be certain theories which talks about independent variables can be connected, and you do not have support that theory connects to the dependent variable. In that case, you have to say that you are creating a new framework with the support of that theory. Then in that case, acceptable. You may have situations whereby you see a theory that give dimension that support independent variable, then doesn't support dependent variable. So in that case, you may have to find another theory to support the dependent variable. Okay, and that's why we say underpinning theories. There could be more than one theory. One theory supporting independent, one theory supporting dependence. All right. Or some cases you are very lucky, then you may have both, like TPB. It has independent, dependent both in the theory. But there are many theories, but only independent supported, dependent not supported. In that case, you have to find another underpinning theory to support that. Okay. Yes, Brother Masood.
Yes, Prof.
Yes, you have a question, or someone was saying there's a question earlier I was answering.
No, Prof. I have already done.
I'm
Thank you
the
so
one.
much.
Right. Who was asking
Femi.
question? No.
I'm the
Yes,
one, Prof.
please. Yes.
Yes. On the scope of the study, you
It's
mentioned,
still not clear.
Prof,
Yes.
on the scope of the study, you mentioned that we need to address those we are getting data from, how to analyze data also. So I want to ask if that is not similar to methodology, if we are to mention that in scope of the
That's a
study.
good point you have raised. When you write chapter 1, please take note this. Chapter 1, chapter 2, 3, chapter 3 has to be edited and upgraded after writing your chapter 4 and 5. What you have expected to do in chapter 1, you have written. In actual data collection after that, when you found your results, you see it's totally different, in many cases. In that case, you have to come back and rewrite and edit chapter 1. Okay. And then you change your chapter 2, literature review, got to be updated and upgraded also, and make changes in chapter 3. So once you complete data collection analysis, write chapter 4, 5, please come back to chapter 1 and revisit and do rewriting on certain parts of chapter 1 to 3. That's where many students are very weak, Say, for example, you have defended your research proposal after 1 year. And after that, it took you 2 years to collect data, do analysis, and write chapter 4, 5, finally, final Viva Voce. When we are going for final Viva Voce, it's already 2 years lapsed. So there has been a lot of new literature emerged, right?
Yes.
Then you got to go back and do upgrading and rewriting, editing chapter 1 to 3 again, okay? Please. Brother Lai Majid, are you open to visit Nigeria? I would love to. I got too many followers from Nigeria. Many follows me. So I would love to if it's convenient. COVID is fully settled, and you want me to visit Nigeria, I can go for conducting workshop. That's what I do. I have started doing physical conducting workshop physically now. The first one is with Brother Mashood and all that. It's not that it's not finalized yet. I'm starting to go physically now inside Malaysia. So first one, I'm proposing advanced research workshop, 2 days long, from identifying topic to the final viva voce session and writing papers. Everything will be covered in 2 days. So I'm starting that, and possibly after that, I will try to go out from Malaysia. I do have invitation for Pakistan to go to Pakistan and conduct workshop there. I said not yet. I'm still waiting for the right time. Okay. All right.
We would love to
So
have you, Prof. We would love to
sorry.
have you in Nigeria. We would love to
Inshallah.
have you, Prof.
All right. So those of you who have joined me on the stage and those of you on the live YouTube live, thank you so much for joining me. I hope that the elaboration description of chapter 1 would have been helpful and will help you through, inshallah. Those of you have not written, will help you to write easily and make your life easy, hopefully. And those of you who have written already, possibly it may shed some light to you to see whether you need to revisit and rewrite certain sections in chapter 1. Okay. I'll soon see you next week, inshallah, with chapter 2. So next week we'll have two webinars. One is chapter 2 with me, and the Smart PLS second session with Dr. Parul Kumar. You know, the second one with the higher order model on the Smart PLS. We'll have that in the next session. Okay. So by then, thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy, be happy, be good, and hope to see you soon, inshallah. Okay. Next session, I won't expect you to come on stage for chapter 2. I would expect new faces to come in. All right. So those of you are live with me, if you feel like you would like to join me live for the literature review discussion next week, WhatsApp me that you are interested, and you can join me. I'll bring you to the stage. All right. And those of you have become the brave to come to the stage. Thank you very much for sharing your concerns, raising questions. All the best. Assalamu alaikum, and see you again some other time. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you, Prof.
Prof, for this
We
insightful
appreciate.
lecture, because we can revisit our chapters again also. Thank you, Prof.
Welcome. See you. See you some other time. Bye. So I'm going
Thank you,
to
Prof.
end up the session. Okay. All right.